Elon is really ticking me off. But
Go f yourself. Go f yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob.
welcome to Hoovie's Garage, the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube. And this is actually a brand new car. No, it's not something that's restored and 50 years old. It's an all-new vehicle. It is an Ineos Grenadier, and it does look like an old Land Rover with a mashup of the greatest hits of SUVs of a long forgotten era. I love that somebody is building a new old school truck, and I am just absolutely in love with this thing, enough to where I'm about to punt my Tesla Cybertruck order. Also because Tesla has got me really angry when it comes to the order process and didn't deliver on any of their estimates. So the world's longest wait for a vehicle ever maybe started in November 2019 when Elon Musk unveiled the Cybertruck. I put down a deposit that night, two actually, one for a Cyber Beast, one for a Cybertruck, and 4 years later I finally got the offer to build one, a little over a year, December 29th, 2023. A 4-year wait with an estimate of January to March 2024 for delivery on a Foundation Series Cybertruck. Now they're charging $20,000 more than the normal price of a Cybertruck in this variation to have one of the very first Foundation Series with all of the options, price $99,900. And they said January to March they could have delivery. I applied for a loan through Tesla and got approved with about 5% down, and I waited. January went by, still no build, no VIN. February went by, no build, no VIN. March went by, no build, no VIN. January to March estimate completely out the door. Still no idea when I am ever going to get a Cybertruck. No communication. Tesla, nobody there even really knows. And that's a big issue with Tesla and not having a dealership network. Since it's all direct sales, for whatever reason, their allocation is heavily favoring Texas and California, and everybody else is just getting pretty screwed. So I hadn't seen a Cybertruck in person until I went to California a couple weeks ago and saw over 10. Just driving around. They are everywhere. And there's people all over the country that are Tesla shareholders, that have had multiple cars, have all of the cred with Tesla, more than, say, a YouTuber who's made a few occasional funny videos about Teslas, and they still haven't gotten their car. Meanwhile, some schmo who just put down a deposit because he lives in California has gotten a car. It makes no sense, and if they had some kind of dealer network to advocate for customers, this wouldn't be happening. But for now, there's just no transparency on how they're delivering cars and in no particular order. So people with later reservation numbers, later configurations, months after configuring mine, have gotten their cars. And I'm not the only one in this situation. When I put a post up on a Cybertruck owners group or an enthusiast group, there were many people in the same situation as me. So let's put that in comparison with the Ineos. Now this Ineos was developed by a billionaire named Jim Ratcliffe, who apparently was sitting in a pub called the Grenadier, lamenting about the Defender, the new one being nothing like the original. A few years ago, the original Defender went out of production and they replaced it with a much more civilized, everyday usable SUV, not something that was a hardcore off-roader like the original Defender, which lasted for 60, 70 years. So he was disappointed. The Land Cruiser also wasn't the same. It's completely changed. And the G-Wagon has become a very expensive luxury rider. So he thought, well, I'm a billionaire. Why don't I just make my own car that I want and start an all-new company? But unlike Elon Musk, who bought an existing property, Tesla, and took it to the great heights that it is today, and with the Cybertruck building an all-new facility, Jim Ratcliffe, he started a company from scratch to develop this car, the Ineos Grenadier. But when it came time to actually produce this vehicle, he lucked out because a factory right on the German-France border had just ceased production of the little bitty smart car, and they had an idle, beautiful, state-of-the-art factory and very skilled workers, and they were able to just pop in and make this, which is the farthest thing from a smart car ever. It's a frame-on-body vehicle with a solid front axle, so the only thing left is the Jeep Wrangler, I believe, that competes with it when it comes to that setup. But the Jeep sort of has a negative reputation now in the United States since it got acquired by Stellantis, the whole Chrysler Corporation, and it's gotten very Italian, very unreliable. Stellantis products are currently at the lowest of the low when it comes to quality ratings and complaints about excessive repairs, and the sales are very, very sluggish. So this is really coming into its own market. It's priced far enough below a G-Wagon and a lot of other European luxury SUVs that this thing hits a pretty sweet spot, I think. So it's easy to see why people are so jazzed up about the Ineos Grenadier, including me, and the dealership network in the United States is slowly developing. That's going to be the big problem, is servicing these, supporting these, as they have a limited dealer network in the United States. And one of my local dealers here in Wichita, Schofield Honda, is interested in becoming an Ineos dealer. They actually bought 2 of these, including this one, to try them out and demonstrate them to the public. And in the Midwest, there is a huge demand for large, heavy SUVs like these. Big enthusiasm for them. And I imagine if we did have a dealership in town, it would do very well and cover a multi-state area of people wanting something exactly like this. We're not really like the bush in Australia, but sort of. There'd be a lot of Midwestern rednecks that would come out of the woodwork and buy one of these. So Ineos, if you're watching this, hey, give us a shot in Wichita with a dealership. And with Elon not playing nice, and it seems like everybody in Hollywood can get their Cybertruck, but anywhere else in the country, it doesn't matter to them, I'm ready to make the switch to the old school. And with that, let's start the tour. Before we tour the Grenadier, I would like to thank Purity Debt Solutions for sponsoring today's video. Debt can be a soul-crushing thing, and I know because I have a lot of it right now with all the projects going on at the farm and Hoobie's Garage 3.0. Thankfully, I can sell a hoopty or two to get myself out if I get in too deep into debt. But if you're struggling with something like credit cards, personal loans, collections, medical bills, PDS provides options that consolidate your debt into one low monthly payment. If you're making payments every month and your debt is just not going down the balances, this program really is for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. PDS Debt is a top-rated company on Google, and they have an A+ rating on the Better Business Bureau, and they're offering a free debt analysis. It only takes 30 seconds, and you can save thousands in interest and fees. Pay off your debt in a fraction of the time. Head over to pdsdebt.com/hoovies to get your free debt assessment today. Now, back to the Grenadier. From the front, it's hard to believe that Ineos could get away with building something that so closely resembles the Defender, but there is a few small differences with the headlights and the grille. I suppose it's just enough, but the nose itself looks a lot like a Land Rover old school Defender. Now, this is a car that you can option with steel wheels. Something that starts at $60,000 comes with 17-inch steel wheels, which is hilarious but awesome at the same time. This one has the nicer alloys with the bead lockers on it. And yes, when you look underneath, that is a solid front axle. And it is a very, very beefy looking suspension as well. Wonderful approach angle with the high bumper. You can option a winch that actually hides neatly behind the front bumper, which this one doesn't have. But other than that, this is a super, super loaded example. As you go down the side, you can see you have these claddings, which you can option with hooks to sort of hang things to dry if you're on the beach or swimming or whatever. Some grab handles too to hang more things, or I suppose mount a roof rack. And the side profile does look a lot like a Defender as well, but also I think there's a little bit of old Land Cruiser in there and a little bit of G-Wagon. As you go around to the back, there is a ladder, and it's a 2-piece tailgate, so you can open this easy side to get things in quickly. And the back, well, it does look a lot like a Defender or a G-Wagon. Visibility is very old school in this thing with these massive pillars, and the backup camera is there, but it's not anything fancy, and I'm totally fine with that. There's backup sensors and things, but on the G-Wagons, they call it the famous G-Wagon dent, where you'll see a lot of dents around here with the G-Wagons, because people back into trees and things that they can't see because of the massive blind spots. And speaking of massive, this fuel filler door is huge, like crazy huge. I think because in Europe it's offered as a diesel, you have to have 2 ports, one for the diesel exhaust fluid. It looks kind of silly just having 1 port in there, but when you walk around it, it does look very tough, very brutish, certainly looks the part of an old school off-roader. And when you crawl underneath, it definitely looks the part as well. There is that beefy, beefy frame. This looks like an old truck. There's the transfer case, pretty exhaust, huge beefy drive shaft that the Wizard would love going both ways, and there's a really good look at that solid front axle as well. Now the engine itself is actually from BMW. And the transmission, AZF from BMW as well. And in my experience with BMWs, their best engines are their understressed ones. When it comes to the M cars, there's always some big gotcha, some big breakable thing, but say like a 528 or a BMW 330 or the basic 3-liter X5, those always seem to be the ones that would last the longest. And even though this is a more complicated twin-turbo inline-6, the way of the world today, I do think that they made a pretty logical choice. So you can see this is the Grenadier Fieldmaster Edition, so the off-road focused vehicle, and inside it is more of that old school goodness. Yes, it has carpeted floor mats, but underneath it's rubber. You can option it with carpet, but this one has rubberized floors. Recaro seats that are actually pretty darn comfortable. I'm super happy with that. And when you step inside, look at this center console. It looks like a Cold War era nuclear missile silo. Same with up here, or, you know, Top Gun with Tom Cruise, where you're missile arming and launching. It looks like it's out of an aircraft or a helicopter. Very manly, very macho. Looks super cool. And you have an old school lever for the transfer case to move it manually. Now the shifter, obviously right out of a BMW, looks a little bit out of place, but that's nice because you know that this is going to match up with some parts bin with a BMW. Same with all of the engine and drivetrain stuff. So this is going to be on the shelf at BMW dealers. Now you can see this one is optioned with the Safari sunroofs. No big sunroof going across because of this huge button cluster here. So they have two little pop-up kind of Safari style sunroofs, and it looks very cool. It'd be kind of fun if they continued that into the back. Maybe it's something that would come later with those grab handles getting replaced by windows. I think that would be a neat touch, but overall very, very cool. One thing they did probably do to save money though is do a center mounted instrument cluster just like Tesla's, like the Cybertruck, where everything's in the middle. So left-hand drive or right-hand drive probably saves them money in development, but there are buttons galore everywhere to work just about everything, and it has a very macho, intuitive, you know, button pushing feeling. Oh yeah. I mean, listen to that. This is for the accessories. You install a light bar or whatever. The differential lockers. Get an off-road mode, or if you're wading through water, or the hill descent control, the traction control. It's just so dang cool. And when you start this bad boy up, once again to be old school, basic switchblade fob. Lock, unlock, put the key in the ignition, and start it up. And there is a little cluster here in the middle for all the warning lights, which is hilarious. But everything happens right here. The speedometer, all that stuff, the gauges are right here. You have a compass. You can see it was calibrating right there. And as far as the noise, it just makes muffled twin-turbo BMW noises. Nothing exciting there. And I really only have one gripe with this vehicle, and I get that it's old school and classic and throwing back to a different era, but the stereo is pretty darn weak in this thing. My stereo test is to do Careless Whisper at full volume with the saxophone and the bass and the synthesizers, and at full volume it's like at normal listening volume. It's not very powerful. But there is one major gripe from people who test drive these and haven't driven an old school SUV in a really long time, and I'll show you that as we cruise. You would never think looking out of this windshield that this is a brand new car. I keep saying it over and over again, but it just blows me away. It is so cool. And the instrument cluster being in the middle like the Tesla, it really doesn't bother me at all. And there is a little bit of tech in here in the infotainment system as far as like for off-roading to mark your trail, sort of like if you're in a yacht in the sea and you want to retrace your steps. Plenty of cool things in there, but I just love the fact that if I want to turn the heated seats on, I don't have to flip through a bunch of menus, I hit this button. If I want to change the climate control, I turn this knob. If I want to turn off the start-stop feature, I hit that button. One little goofy thing is this sort of has town and country horns, and they put the toot toot button for the quiet horn next to the volume change button, so you could accidentally do the toot toot rather than the very loud horn. But I don't imagine that mistake would happen very often. Now I'm flooring it right now, and that twin-turbo inline-6 does do a good job of motivating this vehicle. It's not fast by any means, but it is certainly adequate. It does have some of the required modern tech, like the lane keep assist, and in Europe it does have a bing and bong required if you're going over the speed limit, so you do have to go into a menu and turn that off every single time you drive the car. That's sort of the way of the world. It'll be in every car nowadays, unfortunately, but at least Ineos makes it all easy to turn off at least makes it possible to turn these things off. Let's get to where I can hit some speed here. It's really not bad. Oh, forgot to disable the speed limiter thing. Overspeed warning off. There we go. I need to go a little bit faster than the speed limit. I'm talking 4 or 5 over, just to show the complaint that some people have with these, and that is the vague wandering steering, which it is, well, you can see, it's not doing anything and I'm moving the steering wheel this much. So when you get in a windy scenario, or say the moose dodging thing, it does feel a little disconcerting if you're not used to old school trucks and SUVs. But if you think about solid axle vehicles from 20, 30 years ago, this is still way, way better than that. This is not an agile, maneuverable vehicle like the new Defender, and that's the point. The point is for this thing to be rugged and capable and invincible and not some mall crawler. Yes, it does make it drive a little bit more like a boat, but that does make it a lot more rugged and durable. Current smart suspensions with air ride and magnetic ride and such, a lot more unreliable, maintenance heavy, but a lot more dynamic to where they have this great performance off-road and on-road. You don't get that here. It is old school, and I am totally fine with that. But what the owner of this car wouldn't be fine with is me taking it off-road around the farm and bogging it in the pond like my Land Rover Evoque convertible. So we are not going to do that because this thing is brand new and clean and shiny and not mine to do that with. So instead, well, let's take it to the Car Ninjas because he is my BMW mechanic, and I'm curious what he's going to think of this with that BMW drivetrain. Ninja!
Nice.
Doesn't look familiar, but it should sound familiar.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Yes. Let's do the hood pop here. Look at the little badge on the hood, Ninja. Over on this side, it says powered by BMW.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice.
So you've heard of these before.
Yeah, yeah.
You actually have one coming in for warranty work?
Yes.
What's broken on it?
The AC is long freon is like very, very weak.
Oh,
And this one has the 1, 2, 3, 4 YF freon, which is highly expensive.
I see. But that would be a warranty repair, so just finding the leak or whatever.
So I guess the dealership told the customer, take it wherever you want to, and we'll take care of it. So
Nice. Well, does it look familiar? I guess, let's see,
Very
is this
familiar.
plastic cover? Oh, that
Yeah.
just lifts right off, huh?
yeah, it's BMW.
Not very elegant, which is why they need the cover. And then
Yes, too much going on.
they have the insulation because the direct injection's so
Yes, it
noisy with the
makes noise.
ticking. So
Absolutely, yeah.
it sounds like it's broken when it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd love working on this thing,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
But it's just so old school otherwise. So does anything look non-BMW as far as any of the accessories? Or that crank pulley looks kind of beefy? Or is that the same?
The radiator doesn't look BMW. Yeah.
Okay.
No, the crank it doesn't. No, that's not BMW. Or it doesn't look familiar, but the radiator.
It is?
No. It does not look like BMW. It looks like more like a Range Rover or something.
Right. So I was saying, as far as BMW engines go, it's like the non-M, the under-stressed sort of basic engines, with the exception of that terrible four-cylinder.
But this
are
is
the good
this
ones.
is really good. Yeah, I like this
like
one a lot.
super durable.
Durable. Yeah. How
And-
did it drive?
I mean, it's not powerful by any means for such a heavy vehicle, but it's definitely adequate. So, is this what you have in your X5, right?
No, my X5 is an old one. My X5 has an N55.
Okay.
This is the B58. So yeah, it's.
So
much-
what would this be found in?
I think on like 18 and newer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you haven't had to do any timing chains or
No,
Vanos or any of
absolutely
that
not.
weird
Nope,
stuff?
Not at all.
And they're getting old enough to where you'd start running into valve seals or...
They don't
Yeah.
have valve seal problem at all.
Yeah, great.
Nice, yeah.
So do you see anything that looked like it would be a pain in the butt to work on as far as reach or anything?
No, not yet.
Hmm.
Plus on this one, you got plenty of room. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then look at that old school steering gearbox there. That is not something that you'd see on a new car
No.
anywhere anymore. Wow. That looks like something that'd be 50 years old. That's the one complaint, is the vague steering. So I imagine that old school gearbox is the reason for it. But I kind of like the old school feel, so it works for me. I mean, it really works for me.
Straight axle.
Yeah, solid front axle.
Made by Land Rover, I guess.
I don't know.
That is not BMW.
No, it's not BMW for sure. They make these in sort of the French-German border, frame on body, very, very old school. So I'm still waiting on the Cybertruck. I still have the order, but I'm about to punt. I'm about to give up. And this seems like a great contender, a knockoff Defender done right. So it has the Car Ninja seal of approval, and it has mine. Usually I don't buy new. Wait till things get kind of used and hoopty and cheap, but this is mighty, mighty tempting. Thank you so much for watching.